We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them.
You work hard in your business. On the Profit by Design podcast, we ask the big question. What has your business done for you lately? Hi, I'm Dr. Sabrina Starling. I'm the business psychologist, the author of the 4-Week Vacation and the How to Hire the Best series, as well as the founder of Tap the Potential, where we coach entrepreneurs like you to design sustainably profitable businesses that give you more time for what matters most and more money in your bank account than ever. Because after all, we believe work supports life, not the other way around. Weekly on the Profit by Design podcast, we bring you tips, tools, and strategies from our own experiences and from the experiences of our guests who are entrepreneurial thought leaders and real life entrepreneurs, all to support you in making intentionally profitable and sustainable business decisions to live the lifestyle you desire.
Are you struggling to set boundaries with your team, in the business, and holding expectations? This is such a common struggle, and I want to deep dive into this today with you. I'm Dr. Sabrina Starling, the business psychologist and the author of the How to Hire the Best series and the 4-Week Vacation. I love helping business owners build great teams, and I firmly believe that boundaries are a part of having a great team. And at the same time, boundaries with our team members and holding expectations with our team members can be very challenging, especially as we ourselves are growing in our leadership. So today's episode is for you if you find yourself having the same conversations over and over with your team members and nothing changes, or you find yourself having those same conversations over and over and periodically blowing up, or you have team members blowing up at you. We're going to dive into why that happens and what to do to prevent that and how to just get your team functioning at the high level that you need them to function at. So the other issue we're going to dive into is, what do you do with those team members who criticize your choices as the leader and the owner of the company, right? Those are really tough conversations, and all of this ties together. We're going to dive into this and sort this out. So I also want to let you know, as part of supporting you in up-leveling your team, we have a very exciting workshop coming up in just a couple of weeks. It's called Unlocking Profit Potential, the Power of A Players and How to Attract Them for 10x Growth. So this is happening Thursday, February 22nd. It's a free workshop. Get signed up at tapthepotential.com/workshop. You're not going to want to miss this one. So I want to share with you why I'm talking about this today. It comes up so often in our coaching groups, in our Better Business, Better Life program at Tap the Potential. And we had a conversation recently with a client who came to group, and she had the situation where she had just had yet another blow up with a long-term team member who also happens to be a good friend. And I think that's really part of this too, is in so many of our small businesses, we have team members who become our friends or who come into the business as our friends and help us grow the business. And so that makes these conversations even more challenging and figuring out how to set the boundaries and hold expectations. So the issue that was going on is the team member was not being transparent about their work, and they were being asked to do things. There was no documentation of those things being done, even though they're saying, yes, they're happening. And business owners wondering, well, how do I know? I don't know if these things are getting done. And these are key activities that are essential to the function of the business. And then complicating all of this. This is a long-term team member. And there's a lot of emotions involved for both the business owner and the team member, because this is a long-standing pattern that's been going on in the business. And so the business owner is saying, I just find myself getting more and more frustrated because this just keeps happening. And the performance, I think I tell her what I'm looking for, but then the results and the performance just are not at all anywhere near what I'm anticipating. And so the overall question that's being asked here is this team member still a good fit? And what I want to kind of hit on here is this is an issue that comes up a lot in our small businesses with long-standing team members. And we see it at Tap the Potential Because business owners like you come in and you're here to up level. You're here to grow the business. And that means you've got to grow in your leadership. So we have team members on our teams that have been with us from the early years when our mindset was at a different place and our leadership was at a very different place. And so that's where the challenge really comes in. And, I think it's hard because we feel this loyalty too to these team members. And we feel like, well, they've been such a part of the business growth. And in the past, they've really hunkered down. They've been there when I needed them. They've done extra work when it was needed. But yet here we are in the situation where they're not doing what I'm asking them to do. And there's no evidence that key activities are being conducted, even though they say they are, and they're wanting me just to trust them. So I want to share Einstein's quote with you because I think this really speaks to the heart of the matter. And it was Einstein who said, we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. Yeah. So the world we've created in our small businesses, the culture that we've created in our small businesses is a result of our thinking a year, 2, 3 years ago. And we've grown a lot since then. And in order to change things that are long-standing patterns from the past that keep happening over and over, we have to change our thinking. So the solutions are going to come when we challenge our existing beliefs and our existing thought patterns, because our leadership is constantly growing and evolving. So let's just really kind of dive into this because you're growing and your expectations are more clear. You know what's needed from your team members and they're not hitting it. So the first piece we really need to get to is what are the critical steps to clarifying expectations with your team? So if you've been through the How to Hire the Best course or you've read my How to Hire the Best books, you know that I talk to you about the very first thing you do before you hire is you need to identify the person that you're hiring, the role that you're hiring for. If that person can't get anything else done in a given day or a given week, what is the one result that is absolutely critical that they achieve and deliver in this role? And you want to hire people who have the personality strengths needed to deliver that result exceptionally well, day in and day out. And so you may have, if this is a long-term team member, you may have somebody who is perfectly capable of delivering that result day in and day out. But where things may bog down is they may not be willing to document or carry out consistently the daily and weekly successful actions that need to happen to deliver that result. So that lack of consistency and transparency about what they're doing is not going to get you to the next level. And I always like to talk to team members about this from the perspective of if you suddenly got sick tomorrow and you couldn't come to work and I had to go in and do your job, would I be able to pick up and see who you had a conversation with yesterday and the work that you completed yesterday and the next steps and what needs to happen this week going forward to keep this role going and to hit this result that we need to accomplish as a company? And if the answer to that is no, that means the team member is not being transparent enough with their work. They're not documenting what needs to happen. So for each role that you have in your business, you want to have a clear one result. What is this person responsible for? So like a sales team member, they have a responsibility to hit a sales quota, right? That's the one result. And then there are daily and weekly success activities that those are successful actions that go towards hitting that one result. Those actions need to be documented. There needs to be a record of conversations and actions that are being taken to achieve that result. So every role, you want to have that level of specificity created. Now, here's the challenge. If you are just in a place where you're just now tackling this issue, there's a good chance you don't have a role chart or an accountability chart in your company yet. You don't have clarity on most of the roles in the company as to what people are doing. A lot of the roles have evolved over time and people have just kind of picked things up as they've gone. And so there's a lot of vagueness and lack of clarity. And so I don't want you to say, I'm going to get a handle on this. We're going to straighten this out for every role in the company, because that's overwhelming. You may have 10 or 20 people working for you, and it's just going to lead to you spinning your wheels. And we don't want that for you. So what I want you to start with is start with the most problematic area where you suspect that you have a team member who's not, they're not hitting the result that you're looking for. And you suspect that they are not focused in the direction that you need them to focus. So this is where you want to start having the one-to-one conversations. And in the one-to-one, you absolutely have to clarify expectations. And I think this is the perfect place to say, in full transparency here on my end, we've never had a clear job description for your job. And I know as we've grown, you've picked up a lot of different responsibilities over time. And I'm not clear if you're focused in the most effective area for us. And I'm not sure if you're even working from your strengths. So let's sort this out. So you're inviting them into a let's sort this out conversation. And I love to get team members understanding that I want them working from their strengths. And I want to make sure that their strengths align with the result we need them to deliver day in and day out. And so it's very good to have these conversations and just clarify. I know you're doing a lot of things for us in the business, but I want you to know that if you can only get one thing done in a given day or a given week, this is the key result that I need from you. And you want that result to be specific and you want it to be measurable. And ask them if they have any questions about that. Are there any challenges in hitting that result? And here's where you have to kind of guide the conversation, because if you have a team member who starts pointing fingers and blaming others when you ask, are there any challenges in hitting that result? You have someone who's taking a victim mindset. And they may start blaming you, the business owner. They may say it's a problem because of your leadership. It's a problem because of your lack of transparency, your lack of communication, you're this, you're that. Okay. And I'm going to get to that, how to handle that in a moment with the team members who question you and your leadership as the business owner. But for now, what I want you to think about is just note that that's somebody who is taking a victim stance and they may not be coachable. So I invite you to keep bringing the conversation back to, well, and what might your role be? And what might your role be? And see if they will identify in any way that they're contributing to that challenge or that they may be a part of the challenge that they're experiencing. That's a good sign if they do. If they don't, you have somebody who's not coachable. And at that point, you really need to consider whether or not it's worth keeping them on the team. Most likely it's not, because when you have people who aren't coachable, they're not willing to change their actions. They're really entrenched in their belief system and their behaviors that they have. So once you have gotten clarity around what is going on, what makes this challenging, then the next thing that you want to do is look at how can you support them in resolving those challenges. And this is where having an ongoing weekly one-to-one can be very helpful, because if they are really committed to hitting the result and they're identifying challenges and you're saying, yeah, let's keep working through this, I want to support you, and they're identifying ways that they're going to start resolving those challenges, you having a weekly one-to-one starts to create the opportunity for you to have a better understanding of what they're dealing with in their role. And when you do these one-to-ones, it's not your responsibility to go behind them and check and see what they've done. It is their responsibility to bring to you what they've been working on in the past week to deliver the result and to address the challenges that are coming up. And if they are not coming into those meetings prepared to talk about that, that is another big red flag for you to be paying attention to. So if that doesn't start to improve the situation, the next step is to have a formal performance review where you have documented, these are the results you're responsible for, these are the expectations, these are the daily and weekly success actions we expect you to take, rate their performance. And by the way, I go in depth in episode 271 about how to deal with an underperforming team member and how to do these types of performance reviews and what goes into the performance evaluation and how you set that up. So I'm not going to go too far into that today. Just go back and listen to episode 271 if you want to hear that. But what you do is you create this performance review. You let them rate themselves and you rate them. And then you talk about if there's any discrepancies in your ratings, because it's very possible they see their performance differently than you see their performance. After that, you identify for them the specific actions they are responsible for. And those become their performance improvement actions that they need to take. And they're at that point, they're on a formal performance improvement plan, and you inform them of that. And then 4 to 6 weeks later, you're going to have a follow-up review, and you're going to see if there's been significant improvement and if they're hitting expectations. And at that point, after they're on a formal performance improvement plan, and you're evaluating 4 to 6 weeks later, you're not looking for a small increase in performance. You're looking for them to hit the expectation. If they're not hitting the expectation at that point, and they've been provided with weekly one-to-one coaching from you to hit those expectations, that's when you let them go. And I really think that's so important for us business owners to have that clarity around, okay, this is how I communicate expectations. And this is when I know I'm at my stopping point with this, because what I see business owners do over and over is we give another chance. They made a little bit of improvement, so we're going to give another chance because maybe they'll get better. And it's so much easier to deal with the known than to fire them, have to figure out who's going to do the work, and hire someone who's going to be another unknown in the company. So all that fear thinking gets mixed in there, and that keeps us trying and trying for way too long with team members who aren't hitting expectations. And so these clear boundaries around, here's the expectations. If you're not hitting them, here's the point where we stop trying to make this work. Like, we're going to be done and we're going to part ways. And if this person is a friend, one of the things that I really invite you to consider, sometimes we're tempted to keep our friends on just because they're friends and we don't want to damage the friendship. But what's really happening is the friendship is getting more and more damaged the longer this goes on, because your frustration builds up, their frustration is building up. So it actually is a means to possibly preserving the relationship, the friendship, by ending the working relationship, because it can be very hard to mingle those two. And so let's talk about, we've gone through the critical steps to clarifying the expectations and what to do if they're not hitting expectations. And we've also talked about how to set boundaries with team members who repeatedly fail to hit those expectations. That's a clear, you're on a performance review, there are clear actions, you have a performance improvement plan. If you don't hit expectations within 4 to 6 weeks after you're on that performance improvement plan, we're done. We're going to part ways. So let's talk about, what do you do with these team members who may have been on your team for a long time and they're criticizing you, your leadership, your choices, the decisions you're making about how you're going to grow the business. One of the interesting dynamics here is those of us who love to grow, who are always learning, we usually want feedback, right? And so we invite feedback from our teams, and we can make ourselves very unintentionally, we can make ourselves very vulnerable to team members who will criticize us to undermine our confidence in our leadership. And so what I think is really important is to have a clear perspective and patience for yourself as a leader. So you're learning, you're growing. Yes, you're going to make mistakes. You may have made a decision 2 years ago that turned out to be a disaster in the business. And then you learned from it. You paid attention to what are the learning opportunities here, and you continued to grow. And because of that, you're in a stronger place today. If you have team members who have been with you a long time and they repeatedly refer back to, that time that you did this or that, and you set us up, blah, 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 for all these problems, and they're using that against you, they're toxic to your team. And that's what is so important to understand. So when you have team members who criticize your leadership decisions, one of the most important discussions to have with them is, I am learning and growing just like you are. And it is not okay to berate me and bring me down over past mistakes. I have made this decision for us because I believe it is in our best interest, and this is the direction we're headed. Are you willing to be a part of this with us? They may not be willing to be a part of it with you, and that's okay. But instead of dancing around the issue and letting their criticism go on and on, because they're not just criticizing you to you, they're probably criticizing you to other team members, which becomes very toxic and undermines the culture of the business. So, and there's also a way for team members to deliver feedback without being negative and critical. I just had some feedback yesterday from a team member who said, "Hey, I see some ways that you can improve this. Are you interested in hearing this?" And I said, "Yes, tell me." That's somebody who is on board and wants us to grow and go, headed towards our vision. If that kind of feedback could have been delivered in like, "Hey, you really messed this up over here. This looks kind of awful. I don't like this." That's very negative and toxic. And instead it was like, "Hey, I know you're trying to accomplish this. This doesn't quite align with what you're trying to accomplish. And I have some ideas of how it might be improved. And are you willing to hear them?" And I'm like, "Yeah, tell me all about that." So that's healthy feedback. And we need that from our team members. So being real clear for yourself, does the feedback that you're getting from your team lift you up and make you want to do better? Or does it make you curl up inside and your stomach turn and make you want to lash out at them? If that's happening, it's toxic behavior from the team member, and it cannot be allowed to go on the team. And I think there's also, in all of this, there is the importance of talking to your team members about their role in the company's success and how important what they do is for the company, and when they're doing what they're doing, how it contributes to the profitability of the company and how that serves them as well as you. And so a lot of times when I start talking to business owners about, well, have you discussed with your team member about how their actions impact the profitability, or their lack of action is impacting the profitability of the company? Business owners say, "I don't like to talk about the numbers with my team members. That's really uncomfortable." So I want to share with you that I've created a guide to talking to your team members about the importance of profitability in the company. And it's written from a very positive perspective where you can educate them about how they have these key results that they're responsible for delivering. And if they're not doing that, how that impacts the company, but also bringing to their attention, and they're creating awareness that they aren't operating in a silo, that we're operating all together as a team to create profitability in the company, to ensure job security, the opportunities for raises, bonuses, promotions, ongoing professional development. All of that happens when the company is profitable. And I think that's a really important part of the conversation when you have an underperforming team member. And it's also important for you to hold awareness around that, because when you have an underperforming team member, they are undermining the profitability in the company, because payroll is your biggest expense. So when you allow someone to stay on your payroll and you write a paycheck every week or every 2 weeks to that person, and they are not hitting their results and they're not working to improve that, you cannot afford to keep them on, because you're just sending money out the door of the business. So if you want to get my guide to talking to your employees about profitability, go to tapthepotential.com/guide. So we've covered 3 critical things today. We've talked about the critical steps to clarifying expectations with your team. We've talked about how to set boundaries with team members who repeatedly fail to hit expectations, and what to say to team members who criticize your leadership, and how to have that conversation with them. So if you're ready to uplevel your team, you recognize you need some A players who are ready to take the business to the next level with you, I want to invite you to our free workshop that's coming up, The Power of A Players and How to Attract Them for 10X Growth, happening Thursday, February 22nd. Just head on over to tapthepotential.com/workshop. And we would love to see you in that workshop and set you up for success by hiring A players on your team. So I want to give you a sneak peek. Next week, I'm going to have Deanna Cotton with me. Deanna struggled for almost 10 years to hit the first 100,000 in revenue in her business. And now she consistently helps startups hit 100,000 in revenue in 90 days, and then scale to 1 million and take vacation all along the way. So you might notice there's some intersection there in what we love to support business owners around. So Deanna and I are going to have a very interesting conversation around how you scale your business and continue to take care of yourself in the process. And remember, if you don't want to miss an episode of the Profit by Design podcast, be sure you're subscribed on whatever platform you enjoy listening to, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, whatever. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss an upcoming episode. Bye for now.
Thank you for spending time with me today. Join me in our Tap the Potential Mighty Networks community at tapthepotential.com/group. Share your aha moments from today's episode, ask me questions, and join in on the fun with your fellow entrepreneurs on the journey to designing sustainably profitable businesses that give you more time for what matters most and more money in your bank account than ever. Isn't it time you take your life back? And finally, share today's episode with a friend if you know a friend who would enjoy it. This is real life business. Keep your chin up, keep moving forward. You got this.